Part 2 of Big Wigs. Melinda started screaming, but I couldn't see what she was seeing from her vantage. I could only make out glimpses of the backs of their heads. The corporate bigwigs' hair began to move. The hair grew and flopped up and down as if they were wearing hats, and they were bald and wearing hair pieces. The hair grew to unrealistic sizes and they growled. Before Melinda finished her scream, the huge, ravenous, big-haired blobs began ripping into her. It tore her into 4 pieces so quickly there was barely any blood. I couldn't see what they actually did, or where the body could have went. I just mutely screamed to myself and prayed I was hit well enough to not get whatever she got. Do better, Darian. Your job depends on it. Buck up, kiddo. You just need to pull yourself up by your bootstraps and buckle down. The corporate, Meltzer, pat Darian on the shoulder as encouragement. Maybe, or intimidation. I wasn't quite sure. The corporate bigwigs all walked in unison, and what I thought was a little odd now shook me to the core. I waited a long while before I moved. I heard Darian sobbing, so I was pretty sure he wouldn't have done that unless he was certain they weren't around to see his weakness. He left the area for a moment. I wasn't sure why, so that's when I made my break for it. I quickly moved to leave, but my legs were stiff and numb from crouching for so long, so I had to grab the table. In that sudden burst of speed, I knocked over a stapler, and it made a very loud bang. I could see Darian running back to the door with a mop in hand, but I broke for it. He was too far away to see me, but he absolutely had to suspect that someone was there, that someone saw. I figured that if I called off, Darian would absolutely have suspected it was me, and he may then conclude that I saw something I shouldn't have seen. I figured that if I showed up to work the next day and acted like nothing happened, it was much better cover than being weird and distant. And it worked. Darian tried to silently and inconspicuously interrogate me by asking me little questions like, how did it go last night? And did I work out any new angles? I channeled my inner Oscar winner and spoke freely. He might have suspected, but at this point, he had no way of actually knowing. A woman was dead, dis-a-fucking-peared, and they weren't going to find a body unless they were going to sift it through the toilet. I couldn't fucking believe what I saw. Even after Melinda mysteriously left to go to a branch in Phoenix. What were the corporates really? What did they want, other than their numbers to be perfect? It was too big for a guy as small as me to comprehend, so for the most part, I did nothing. I kept my eyes open. What else could I do? How could I confront them? Who could I tell? Was I going to have to pull some blade shit and come at them? Find their lair or whatever, and hope I make it? I may have been a coward, but could you really blame me? That being said, I gave myself 2 stipulations if I was going to keep my mouth shut about all this. 1, if they came for anyone I knew, I was going to try to stop them. And 2, if I actually found out what they were doing and they were just eating people, I'd do something. But if neither of those things happened, I was willing to live and let live. I mean, I know it's different than just seeing someone you know kill someone, but how much is it really? If you saw someone you knew ice a dude, would you just automatically tell if you didn't have any proof and you thought they'd come back for you? Well, you think about that before you go judging me. There's a reason most vigilante stories start with someone's family getting murdered, because it takes a special kind of psycho to go it alone and just dole out justice. You lose your family, then you really don't give too much of a fuck if they fuck your life, because it already is. So, in the weeks that passed, Darian did in fact get his numbers up, and for the most part only casually flirted with the women at the office, nothing too nefarious. I myself was having a rather high level of will they won't they with Candy, at least in my mind. I, in all honesty, couldn't tell if she was into me at all, but she came to me on a semi-regular basis and asked me to help pitch her ideas. A woman as hot as her? I couldn't tell if it was what it was or I was reading into it. I was beginning to think maybe it was. She began to laugh around me more easily and at times come over just to do it, and our text and meme tag was pretty intense. Oh yeah, after a few weeks, I started to almost feel not only like things were normal, but things were getting better. I hadn't forgotten about what happened, but I wasn't obsessing about it either. Candy came to me one day with a knitted sweater that she said she made for me. I was shocked. I told her how much I loved it, and I think that maybe I should have made a move there, but I froze. Candy, being as hot as she was, couldn't wait for me to get it. I knew this, so I was planning to ask her out later that day. That's when one of my two rules triggered. I saw Candy talking to Darian by the water cooler, and he was back to his flirty self. She was tossing her head back, laughing and joking with him, and I caught a glimmer of the Darian of old. I couldn't blame him, because if you were going to risk it for someone, she'd be the one to do it for. I texted her to figure out what was happening, without outright telling her not to get too close to that guy. So, is Darian back on his cheesy Don Juan shit again? I texted while looking at her cubicle for her reaction. No, maybe, but he seems a lot better now. He asked me out to talk about giving him notes for his upcoming promotion. I wanted to ask her what the fuck she was gonna tell him, but I didn't because it was too mean. He's up for a promotion, huh? I texted. That's what he said. Are you gonna go? I think so. He doesn't seem the same as he used to be. Don't do that. I started to write, but put my finger on the delete button because I couldn't explain why. At this point, I had to take action, but what exactly would something like that mean in this situation? Was I gonna kill Darian? Or go after the corporates? Nope to both of those fucking ideas, but things needed to be done. I wasn't gonna tell Candy and have her not believe me and call me a weirdo, a step below people that believed there was a murder ring under a pizza place. I decided to deal with this the only way it seemed to make sense to me, by writing my way out of it.